You are no longer yourself. You are a Roman living in the heart of the empire, on a day that might be any day perhaps, just before history shifts in ways no one can foresee. Tonight, you are not just a listener. Tonight, you will live a day in ancient Rome. You awaken in the darkness, long before dawn, in a world thick with the quiet of ancient stone and dreams. There is no soft alarm, no glow of digital numbers, only the cold hush of night and the slow, deep breathing of your family as they sleep beside you. For a moment, you hover in the warmth of your straw-stuffed mattress, blankets heavy across your chest, listening to the pulse of a city that still belongs more to the moon than the sun. The low ceiling above is lost in shadow, marked here and there by the faint outline of dried herbs and the crisscross of supporting beams. Somewhere at your feet, your little brother stirs, wrapping himself tighter in his blanket. On your other side, your sister mumbles a dream and pulls away from the chill that creeps in under the shuttered window. You lie still, letting your mind drift off in the world of sleep, half already tensing for the day to come. Then, quietly, your mother moves near the hearth. You hear the faint, soft click of her knees on the floor, the gentle rattle of clay pots, the careful stirring of last night's embers with a blackened stick. The fire breathes back to life, sending a warm, orange glow up the whitewashed walls. She sings under her breath, just for herself, words as old as the streets outside, a tune about olive trees and river gods, about bread and rain and the luck of a good year. You open your eyes, the cold air pricking your skin, and reach for your tunic, pulling it on over goose flesh and shivering arms. The wool is coarse, but it is warmth, and as you sit up, you see your father already rising, stretching broad shoulders and rubbing the sleep from his eyes. His beard is thick, his face shadowed by years of sun and worry, but when he meets your gaze he gives you a quick, reassuring smile. One by one, your siblings wake, the little room filling with whispers and soft laughter. Your mother pours water from a battered jug into a copper bowl. The water is cold, sending a sharp thrill through your hands as you splash your face. The soap is rough and herbal made from lye and ash, with the scent of rosemary and bay. You scrub your cheeks, blink away sleep, and use the wooden comb to tame your hair as best you can. The room grows lighter as the fire grows stronger, casting gold across the small table where your mother sets out the day's first meal. She spoons out barley porridge, thick and steaming, and drizzles a thread of olive oil over each bowl. There is no honey this morning, your sister pouts at this, but your father tells her to be grateful for what they have. Honey comes in the spring, he says, ruffling her hair. Now we eat what is given to us. You take your place on the bench beside your siblings. The bowl is warm in your hands, the porridge salty and comforting. There is bread, 2½ loaf left from yesterday, crusty and faintly sour, perfect for dipping. Your brother, always hungry, wipes his bowl clean with his last bite. Outside, the city stirs. You hear a distant rooster crow, the hollow clop of a mule's hooves, the cry of a woman hawking herbs at the corner. When the bowls are cleared, your mother hands you a small broom and points to the floor. You sweep the rushes, gathering stray crumbs and dirt from the day before, and open the door to toss them out. The early morning air is sharp and cold, filled with the scents of dew and distant wood smoke. You glance up and down the street. Already, neighbors are beginning their own routines. One woman pours water into a basin, another scrubs her doorstep. A boy your age chases a stray cat away from a basket of fish. You return inside, where your father is buckling his sandals and tying on his work belt. He calls you over with a gesture. We'll go to the fountain together this morning. The aqueduct broke again in the night. We'll have to hurry if we want to get water before the line gets too long. You pull on your shoes, tuck the empty jug beneath your arm, and follow him out into the city's waking heart. The stone street is uneven beneath your feet, and the buildings loom on either side, painted in fading reds and yellows. The sun is still just a rumour, but the sky glows pale pink above the rooftops. At the corner, you pass a group of women whispering over baskets of laundry. Their words are quick, voices low and musical already, trading the day's first news and secrets. An old man leans from a window overhead, pouring out water onto the stones below, and curses the stubborn crows who have made a nest in his eaves. The fountain stands at the end of the street, its marble basin chipped and patched but always full. A handful of neighbours are already gathered, their faces puffy with sleep. You wait your turn as your father jokes with a baker's apprentice, and listen as the city slowly comes to life. The clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the distant song of a street musician, the shouts of a cart driver trying to untangle a stubborn mule from a pile of cabbage leaves. When your jug is filled, you and your father retrace your steps, the water sloshing with each stride. The street is busier now, vendors, setting out their wares, the sweet and yeasty smell of baking bread curling from open doors, a group of children playing with hoops and sticks in the narrow alley beside the forum. Your father nods at a passing neighbour, exchanges a few words in Latin, and tells you to keep your eyes open for pickpockets. There are more every year, he sighs. Times are hard for some. If you see someone you don't know, keep your hand on your purse. Back home, you help your mother prepare for the day's work. She sets you to peeling onions and chopping cabbage for the midday stew. Your sister feeds the chickens in the small yard behind the house, tossing them handfuls of leftover crumbs, and your brother collects eggs in a woven basket. The morning sun climbs higher, golden on the windowsills, filling the house with light. You settle into the rhythms of a Roman morning chorus and laughter, smells of bread and onions, the distant hum of the city waking all around you. Each moment feels ordinary and precious, part of a tapestry woven by hands that reach back centuries. By the time the morning is well underway, the household has settled into its daily rhythm. Your father checks the small tools he will need for his worker leather satchel, a knife, a bundle of string, while your mother sweeps the floor, pausing now and then to scold your younger brother for chasing the family's thin, nervous cat under the table. You take up the clay jug, your arms still tingling from the weight of water, and help your mother fill a row of battered earthenware cups for washing up. She nods her thanks and sends you to the narrow yard, where dew still clings to the leaves of a crooked fig tree. You pluck a handful of herbs mint, marjoram, and a few sprigs of rouet to freshen the air inside. The scents burst in your fingers, clean and sharp, lingering on your skin. Your sister appears at your side, her hair still tangled from sleep, eyes bright with mischief. She asks if you'll help her chase the hens from the neighbour's garden. You pretend to scold her, "Mother will be cross," but follow anyway, laughing as the two of you herd the clucking birds back through a gap in the fence. The old woman next door waves her broom and shouts a warning in a voice that could crack stone, but you know she's smiling beneath her scowl. For a moment, you and your sister are conspirators, keepers of secret adventures in the small green corners of the city. Back inside, the house is filled with noise. Your mother and brother argue over the best way to peel garlic for the stew. Your father steps in, teasing them both, and soon the air is thick with laughter. The old cat, finally at peace, curls up in a shaft of sunlight, purring so loudly you wonder how such a small creature can hold so much sound. You gather at the table to knead bread dough. The flour is coarse, the yeast slightly sour from the jar kept on a high shelf, but your mother's hands are quick and sure. She shows you how to fold the dough, how to press out the bubbles, how to dust the board with just enough flour that nothing sticks. You love the feel of the dough beneath your palms, warm, alive, sticky, and yielding all at once. Outside, the street grows busier. You can hear the cries of the vegetable seller, the creak of an ox cart lumbering over the stones, and the sudden burst of laughter from a group of young men on their way to the forum. You wonder what it would be like to walk with them, to see the world beyond your own neighborhood, to speak with scholars and orators, to watch gladiators in the great arena. But today your world is here, in the dance of work and play, in the soft glow of the kitchen, in the steady rise of bread. As the dough rests, your father calls you to help him in the small workshop attached to the back of the house. The room smells of leather and oil, dust motes spinning in the shafts of light. He shows you how to sharpen a knife on a whetstone, how to mend a strap that has snapped, how to knot twine so that it will not slip. You listen closely, his words slow and patient, his hands broad and careful, marked with small scars from years of honest labor. For a while you work in silence, interrupted only by the distant sounds of the citier woman singing to her baby, a rooster crowing, the sharp clang of metal on metal from a smithy down the lane. Sometimes your father tells a story as he works of his own father, who fought in distant wars, of the flood that nearly swept away the house when he was a boy, of the friend he lost to fever, long before you were born. You find yourself drifting, the details of the stories mixing with the bright morning light and the sense of baking bread. By the time you finish, your fingers are sticky with glue and flour, and your mind is crowded with memories from your own, some borrowed from those who came before. Lunch is simple: a bowl of bean stew, a hunk of fresh bread, a handful of olives. You eat sitting on the step outside, sunlight warming your face. Your sister brings you a slice of apple, and your brother tries to trade a chicken feather for your last piece of cheese. You let him, just to see his triumphant grin. As you eat, you watch the life of the street, a procession of priests in white robes chanting prayers, a peddler selling tiny clay lamps, a boy leading a goat by a rope, an old woman leaning from her window to sprinkle water on the dusty stones. There is something eternal in these momensa sense that the city has always been here, that you and your family are part of a story larger and older than anyone can name. When the meal is finished, you help wash the bowls and stack them to dry. Your mother pulls you aside and asks if you'll go to the market with her to buy more flour, and if there is any left, a few precious figs. You nod eagerly, heart quickening at the chance to see the city in motion, to watch the drama of buyers and sellers, to lose yourself in the scents and sounds of the world beyond your door. You slip on your sandals, tie your belt, and set out beside her into the swirl of Roman midday. The midday sun is high, pouring warmth onto the city's tiled rooftops and the mosaic streets below. You and your mother weave your way through a tangle of neighbors, the city alive with color and commotion. Vendors shout their wares, voices rising above the crowd: fresh figs, sweet honey, fine wool. You pass a row of stalls draped with bright cloth, deep indigo, rich ochre, a green so bright it hurts your eyes. A little girl, hair in wild curls, tugs at her mother's sleeve, begging for a cake dusted with sesame seeds. Your mother moves with the sure-footedness of someone who has walked these streets 1,000 times. She keeps one hand on your shoulder, steering you past a pair of arguing fishmongers and a cart overflowing with baskets of lemons. The air is heavy with smells, the sharp tang of vinegar from a pickle cellar, the heady sweetness of dates, the briny scent of fresh caught eels. You stop at a flour merchant's stall. Your mother inspects the sacks, pinches a sample between her fingers, and haggles in a low, confident voice. The merchant protests, waving his hands, but your mother holds her ground, her eyes sharp and steady. In the end, she gets what she wants, and you help lift the heavy sack onto your back, surprised at how much it weighs. You walk on, passing musicians plucking at lyres, their notes weaving through the babble of the street. A group of young men dice in the shade of a colonnade, laughter erupting with each roll. You glimpse a flash of purple the hem of a senator's robe, then lose sight of him as the crowd swirls and reforms around you. At the fruit seller's stall, your mother selects a handful of figs, firm and purple black, and the woman behind the counter throws in an extra for the little one. You thank her, your mouth already watering at the promise of sweetness. A boy a little older than you offers to swap a wooden toy horse for a slice of your bread, but your mother shakes her head, smiling. "Maybe next time," she says, and he grins and runs off, lost in the bustle. As you move through the market, you take it all in. The warmth of sun on your skin, the press of strangers, the swirl of voices in Latin and Greek and a half-dozen dialects you cannot name. There is a sense of endless possibility. Anyone might be a poet, a thief, a freed slave, a future hero. You imagine yourself grown, trading at these stalls, making clever bargains, laughing and calling out to friends. Your mother pauses to rest in the shadow of a high wall. She dabs sweat from her brow and gives you a fig, split open to reveal its crimson heart. The fruit is soft and impossibly sweet, juice sticky on your fingers. For a moment, you are simply happy alive in the pulse of the city, proud to be her child, eager for whatever comes next. You make your way home through the afternoon heat, the sounds of the market fading behind you. Back at the house, your siblings run to meet you, clamoring to hear what you saw and tasted. Your brother is jealous of the figs, your sister more interested in the new story you've brought, back a tale of the woman who tamed snakes in the square or the juggler who balanced 6 clay jars at once. Your mother divides the figs, saving one for your father, and sends everyone to wash their hands. You empty the flour into the storage jar, feeling a quiet pride at your contribution. For a while, the house is filled with the gentle clatter of chore spots washed, herbs hung to dry, dough punched down for the evening meal. Later, you join your father in the courtyard, where he is mending a broken fence. He shows you how to hold the hammer, how to drive the wooden peg, just so, his hands guiding yours. You work together in the soft gold of late afternoon, the shadows of the fig tree dappling the ground, the air humming with the low drone of bees. Your father asks about the market, about the things you saw and learned. You tell him about the dice players and the fruit seller's laughter, about the colours of cloth and the taste of fresh fig. He listens, nodding, sometimes adding his own memories of the city when he was young, how he once climbed the steps of the Capitoline Hill just to see the world from its highest point, or how he used to watch the priests parade their statues through the streets in spring. When the work is done, you sit for a moment in silence, watching the evening light slip across the rooftops. There is a sense of peace here, in the calm after the day's bustle, in the slow, deliberate rituals of home. Inside, your mother stirs the evening stew, her voice rising in a song you know by heart. Your siblings set the table, arranging the bowls and cups with a pride that turns ordinary clay into treasures. The smell of garlic and herbs fills the house, mingling with the sweet, yeasty scent of baking bread. As dusk deepens, your family gathers for supper, your father at the head of the table, your mother serving each bowl with a careful hand, your brother sneaking extra bread when he thinks no one is looking. You eat slowly, savouring each bite, the flavours of the day lingering on your tongue. When the meal is done, your mother pours water for everyone to wash, and your father tells a story about the time he raced a neighbour's donkey through the city at dawn and won by a nose. Your siblings laugh, and for a while the house is full of easy joy. The sky outside darkens, painted in shades of rose and violet. You help clear the table, wash the bowls, sweep the floor one last time. A soft breeze drifts through the open window, carrying with it the distant sound of a flute and the promise of stars. The sun has slipped below the rooftops now, leaving only a fading line of gold on the western edge of the sky. The air cools quickly, and your mother lights a small oil lamp on the table, its flame flickering against the walls and sending soft shadows into the corners of the room. Your siblings settle on their mats, still whispering about the day's events. Your father sits by the hearth, carving a small piece of wood into the beginnings of a toy for your brother. The steady scrape of his knife is comforting, a familiar rhythm that matches the slow crackle of the evening fire. You help your mother fold the clean linen and put away the last of the herbs. She thanks you with a tired smile, her eyes kind but distant already, thinking of tomorrow's work, of bills to pay and food to stretch. You can see, even in her quiet way, how much she carries on her shoulders. Outside, the street has grown hushed. Voices fade as doors close and windows are shuttered. A neighbour calls good night in passing. You answer softly, your words rising into the dusk, then vanishing into the stillness. Your father calls you over. Together, you walk into the courtyard, where the night air is fresh and tinged with the scent of jasmine and smoke. Above, a handful of stars begin to show, twinkling faintly above the city's rooftops. He points out bright, unwavering spark and tells you it is the star of Jupiter, king of the gods, watching over Rome. You listen, caught between belief and skepticism, feeling a shiver of wonder as the sky deepens and the night unfolds overhead. Back inside, your sister asks for a story before bed. Your father nods, taking his place on a low stool, the children gathering at his feet. He tells an old tale of a shepherd who outwitted a wolf, of a clever slave who tricked a greedy merchant, of the festival when the gods themselves were said to have walked among men. You are lulled by his voice, the rise and fall of the words, the warmth of your family around you. When the story ends, your mother wraps her arm around your shoulders, pressing a gentle kiss to your brow. She sends you to your bed, tucking the blanket close, whispering a soft blessing that you remember from your youngest days. You lie in the half-dark, listening to the last murmurs of the house, the clink of the oil lamp as it is extinguished, the creak of floorboards, the slow, peaceful breaths of your family as they settle for the night. You think of the day behind you, the bread and figs, the laughter and quarrels, the feel of your father's hand guiding yours, the colours and noise of the market, the hush of the courtyard beneath the stars. As your eyelids grow heavy, you hear the distant song of a flute, faint and sweet, drifting up from some unknown corner of the city. You let it carry you, warm and safe, into the deep, gentle darkness of sleep. Tonight, you are only one small soul in the great heart of Rome, but you are surrounded by love, by stories, by the quiet promise that tomorrow and all its ordinary magic will come again. Good night, Roman dreamer. May your sleep be soft and your heart at ease, as the city's ancient stones cradle you through the night. You awaken in the deep blackness before dawn, the world outside lost in the long, unbroken dark of winter. For a moment, you lie still, barely breathing, cocooned in the familiar weight of woolen blankets and animal furs. The air in the longhouse is so cold you can see your own breath swirling above you, white and ghostly in the sliver of moonlight that sneaks through the smoke hole high above. All around you, your family sleeps in a great tangle of arms and bodies, your younger brother curled at your back, your older sister's hand resting on your arm, your parents forming a warm barricade against the winter's chill. Beneath your head, the mattress is stuffed with dry reeds, the faint scent of summer meadows clinging to it still. You close your eyes for a moment and listen. The steady, slow breathing of your father, the gentle sigh of your mother, the tiny rustle as the old dog by the fire turns and settles again. Outside, the wind presses against the thick wooden walls, rattling the moss-packed chinks and sending a dusting of snow in through the cracks. Somewhere in the blackness, a wolf howls distant, mournful, quickly answered by the bark of a dog. You feel a little shiver of fear and comfort both. The wolf is far away, but the dog is close, your family's protector. At last your mother stirs. She rises with the slow, practiced grace of someone who has done this every day of her life, wrapping herself in a thick woolen shawl and moving to the hearth. You hear the soft click of flint and the whoosh of air as she coaxes the coals back to life. She feeds the fire with chips of pine and birch, her face briefly golden in the flickering light. The smells of smoke and peat drift across the room, quickly joined by the faint sweetness of oats as she fills the heavy kettle with water and sets it over the flames. She hums a songen old lullaby, half prayer, half memory meant to comfort the children and keep the darkness at bay. You sit up slowly, shoulders hunched against the cold. Your breath catches in your throat and you rub your hands together, blowing on your fingers to chase away the numbness. Your little brother mutters and pulls the blanket over his head, while your sister yawns and sits up, her hair wild and her cheeks flushed with sleep. Your father opens one eye and grunts, then stretches, joints popping like kindling in the quiet. He smiles at your mother, a small, private look, and you feel a warmth that has nothing to do with fire. The dog lifts his head and thumps his tail, grateful for company and the promise of scraps. When the fire is strong, your mother pours a scoop of oats into the pot and adds a pinch of salt, a handful of dried berries, and the last of the honey. The smell is rich and sweet, and your stomach grumbles in anticipation. Your father pulls on his heavy boots and woolen tunic, then ruffles your hair with a calloused hand, telling you to wake up, little one, or you'll sleep through all the daylight this winter gives us. You rise and help your mother set the low tabler rough plank propped on log-splicing wooden bowls, spoons, and a precious clay jug of goat's milk at each place. Your sister cuts slices of dark, seeded bread, her hands nimble, her face serious with the importance of the task. Soon the family gathers near the fire, the heat soaking slowly into your bones. Your mother ladles out porridge, each bowl steaming and fragrant. You eat in silence at first, grateful for warmth, for food, for the presence of those you love. Your brother spills his milk, your sister teases him, and your father makes a joke about goats who don't know when to give up. Laughter rings in the dark, and for a moment the winter seems far away. Breakfast done, you and your siblings help clean the bowls, scraping every last bit into the dog's waiting mouth. Your mother gives you the task of gathering fresh snow to melt for water, and you pull on your thickest mittens and step outside into the frozen world. The village is still, smoke rising from a dozen roofs, each house its own island of light and life. You fill your pail with powdery snow, your breath billowing out before you, cheeks stinging from the cold. You stamp your feet, look up at the pale, star-splattered sky, and wonder how long until the sun returns. Back inside, the air is thick with wood smoke and the smell of wet wool. You shed your cloak, hands red and aching, and hold them out to the fire. Your father is already sharpening his knife, preparing for a day in the forest. Your mother cards wool by the window, humming to herself, the wheel spinning a slow, comforting rhythm. You join your siblings, sharing the first chores of the day, feeding the chickens, mending a broken basket, sweeping the earthen floor. The morning stretches before you, endless and full of small, necessary things, the rituals that bind family to family and you to your place in the world. The pale light of morning finally seeps through the thick hide curtain that covers the doorway, painting silver lines on the packed earth floor. You and your older sister are sent outside with your father. He needs help tending to the animalsa job that feels important in winter, when every creature's survival depends on human care. The snow crunches under your boots, each step sinking you nearly to the knee. Frost glitters on the goat pen's wooden rails. The goats, sleepy and grumpy, huddle together for warmth. You and your sister break the thin layer of ice on their water trough, refill it with water warmed in a battered iron kettle, and scatter dried grass from last summer's harvest into their manger. Your father checks each animal in turn, running his hands over their backs, murmuring to them in the old dialect his own father taught him. He shows you how to spot the first signs of frostbite on a goat's ear, how to mend a broken rail, how to knot a rope so it will hold even if the wind howls. When the work is done, you trudge across the yard to the chicken coop, where your little brother is already hard at work collecting eggs. His nose is red, his mittens clumsy, but his face shines with pride as he presents 3 brown eggs and 1 pale blue. Your father tousles his hair and praises him. "We'll have a feast with these," he says, though you all know that in winter even a single egg is too precious to waste. After the animals are cared for, your father returns to the longhouse to ready his tools for a trip into the forest snares for rabbits, a bow and a few arrows, an old axe for fallen wood. He invites you to come along, and you follow gladly, pulling on your thickest coat and mittens, stuffing your pockets with a slice of cold bread and a bit of cheese. The forest is quiet, muffled by snow, every branch bowed under its weight. Your father's breath steams in the icy air. He shows you animal tracks in the fresh powder fox, hare, and once the enormous paw print of a lynx. You ask if he is afraid of wolves, and he smiles, shaking his head. "Wolves are clever, but they want nothing to do with us, unless they're hungry or we're foolish. Respect and care, that's all it takes." You watch as he sets snares, the movements practiced and careful, his hands steady, despite the cold. He teaches you which branches are best for kindling and which for firewood, how to split a fallen log with a single, sure stroke. As you work, he tells stories of the forest when he was a boy, of the storm that felled the giant birch, of the time he saw an owl in daylight and took it as a sign of good luck. Your cheeks sting from the cold, but you feel strong, old enough to do real work, proud to be trusted by your father. By midday, your stomach rumbles, and you sit together on a fallen log, sharing bread and cheese, sipping water from a goatskin pouch. The world is utterly still, save for the occasional creak of ice or the sharp call of a crow overhead. When you return to the village, the sun, such as it is in winter, hangs low in the sky, casting blue shadows across the snow. Your breath hitches with relief as you spot the smoke curling from your family's longhouse. Warmth and food await. Inside, the fire burns brightly. Your mother and sister are carding wool and spinning thread near the window, their voices rising and falling as they sing an old lullaby. Your little brother sits by the hearth, carving a toy from a bit of driftwood, his tongue poking out in concentration. You strip off your outer layers and hang them on pegs by the door. The warmth hits you like a wave, flushing your cheeks and thawing your fingers. The midday meal is simple but welcome, a thick soup made from beans and root vegetables, flecked with bits of smoked fish. You eat with gratitude, dipping hard bread in the broth, letting its warmth fill you. Your father tells your mother what he saw in the forest, and she nods, already planning which furs might need mending and which herbs to set by the door to keep away bad luck. After lunch, you help your sister sweep the floor, scattering sweet-smelling spruce needles over the packed earth, while your mother starts kneading dough for the next day's bread. The house fills with the gentle rhythms of work wool carded and spun, dough kneaded and set to rise near the fire, pots scrubbed clean and stacked. You slip outside for a moment, listening to the muffled sounds of the village. A neighbour's dog barks, children laugh as they slide down the small hill behind the smithy, and smoke rises from every chimney, a sign that each family is safe, together and enduring. You return inside, ready for the next task, feeling the steady pulse of home in the winter heart of the north. After the midday meal, the longhouse is bathed in a warm, golden glow. The sunlight slips through the small, oiled parchment window, pooling in wide, soft stripes across the floor. Your mother sits by the fire, her hands quick and practiced as she threads a new warp onto the loom. The steady click and thump of the weaving fills the air, a comforting rhythm that you have known since childhood. You and your siblings gather near her feet, helping to untangle skeins of coloured wool, sorting them by shaded deep forest green, cloudy blue, the red of last summer's berries. Your little brother asks if he can choose the pattern for the new blanket. Your mother laughs, promising that if he works hard, he can help with the first row. Your older sister teases him about his taste for wild designs, and you join in, feeling the warmth of family and the easy flow of laughter. A neighbour knocks at the door, stamping snow from his boots. He brings news from the other end of the village. A calf was born during the night, and old Bjorn lost his best axe to the river's ice. The grown-ups talk in low voices about the coming feast, about whether the weather will turn, about who still has enough grain to share if the winter drags on. While the adults talk, you and your siblings slip outside, boots crunching on the hard snow. In the pale afternoon light, the village feels both vast and clothes smoke rising from low roofs, the distant bark of a dog, the sharp scent of pine and snow. You find your friend Runa behind her family's house, arms full of kindling. She grins, and together you build a small fortress of snow bricks, pretending you are defending the village against frost giants and trolls. Other children join in, and soon the air rings with your shouts and laughter, the crisp cold forgotten in the thrill of play. When you are breathless and flushed, you trudge home, snow melting on your mittens, hair tangled and damp. Your mother greets you at the door with a cloth to wipe your face and hands you a small piece of dried apple-sweet tart and precious in the middle of winter. The afternoon slides gently toward dusk. You help your father split logs for the evening fire, stacking them in neat rows by the door. He shows you the right way to hold the axe, how to judge the grain of the wood, when to swing and when to let the tool do its work. You relish the chance to show your growing strength. His rare, quiet praise means more than a feast. Inside, your mother stirs a pot of stew over the fire, the scent of onion and dried meat rising through the house. Your sister slices a precious onion thin as paper, her eyes watering. Your brother sets the table, proud to carry the heavy clay bowls without dropping a one. As twilight deepens, your family gathers for the evening meal. The room is filled with the hush of satisfaction, spoons scraping bowls, the crackle of the fire, the soft murmur of your father's voice as he thanks the old gods for another day's safety. After supper, your mother doles out chores. You help clear the table, wash the bowls with snow melted in a kettle, then sweep the floor clean of crumbs and ashes. The last light fades from the sky, and your father lights a tallow candle, its small golden flame chasing the shadows into the corners of the room. You curl up with your siblings near the hearth, wrapped in a shared blanket. Your father sits on his stool and begins to carve a wooden toy little horse, or maybe a wolf. It's too soon to tell. He hums an old tune under his breath, while your mother braids your sister's hair, her fingers gentle and sure. When the toy is done, your father sets it on the mantel, with the others a collection of memories, each one shaped by his hands on nights like this. He tells stories as he works, tales of the gods who walk the wild woods, of the sly fox who tricked a giant, of the first longhouse built in a clearing no bigger than your hand. You listen, half dreaming, the warmth of the fire sinking deep into your bones. Your brother leans against your shoulder, already drifting towards sleep, and your sister's head rests in your lap as her breathing slows. You think about the world outside, the snow still falling, the trees black against the blue-black sky, the faint glimmer of the first star rising above the rooftops. Your mother draws the thick curtains, shutting out the night, and gently urges everyone to bed. You pull off your boots and crawl beneath your pile of blankets and furs, the day's tiredness sweet in your body. For a long moment you lie awake, listening to the wind in the eaves, the soft shuffle of your father banking the fire, the almost silent heartbeat of the longhouse, itself old wood, warm light, the memory of summer fields sleeping beneath the snow. You close your eyes, safe in the small golden world of home. The night will be long and cold and full of dreams. Sometime deep in the night, you wake to the sound of footsteps outside the longhouses, soft and muffled in the snow. At first, your heart pounds, but soon you recognize your father's steady tread as he makes his rounds, checking the animals in the shelter, making sure the shutters are tight against the wind. The village has its dangers, but tonight all is peaceful. You listen as the door creaks open and closes again, then hear the quiet click of the latch. Your father sits by the fire for a while, sharpening a knife, his face lit orange by the coals. He pours a little ale into a cup and sips in silence, thinking his private thoughts. You see him glance at the shelf of carved figures above the hearth, small wooden likenesses of the old gods, painted and worn by years of prayers and promises. There is a comfort in knowing he is there, keeping watch, while the rest of you sleep. Soon he stands, adds a few more logs to the fire, and slips back beneath the blankets beside your mother, his arm curling protectively around her. You drift back into dreams, but the night is full of gentle awakenings. The dog grumbling and changing position, your little brother burrowing closer to your side, the faint whistle of the wind finding a crack near the window. Each time you settle again into the warmth, knowing you are safe. As the night wears on, the fire burns lower. The longhouse is filled with a soft chorus of breaths, the slow tick of drips from melting icicles, the muffled stir of someone pulling the blanket higher. A sudden hush falls, and you wake once more to a faint green glow leaking through the small window. You scramble up, tugging your sister's sleeve. Sleepy but curious, she joins you at the door, where you pull back the curtain just enough to see the world outside. Terrace spilling across the sky, the northern lights at last, swaying and flickering in waves of pale green, streaks of violet and silver shifting behind the black bones of trees. For a moment you forget the cold biting your toes, the hour, everything but the wonder overhead. You call softly to your parents and brother, and soon the whole family crowds together at the threshold. You stand in silence, eyes wide, breath misting in the icy air, as the lights ripple and spin. Your mother presses your hand and whispers that these are the torches of the gods, or the spirits of great warriors, or perhaps just the dreams of the world made visible. After a long while, the lights begin to fade, dissolving back into the star-spattered dark. You close the curtain, crawl into bed, and let your heart settle. It feels as if the sky itself has sung you a lullaby. When you wake again, the sky outside the window is a soft blue, promising the slow return of day. The house is cold but peaceful, the fire only embers now. Your family still sleeping bundled together in the quiet safety of another night survived. You lie very still, letting the memory of the lights fill you with hope. Winter is not over, but spring is one day closer. You hear the soft chirp of a bird, braving the dawn, and smile into your pillow, grateful for warmth, for family, for the wild beauty of the north. Another day will begin, full of chores and laughter, of stories and small victories, of survival and love. And you, child of the northern winter, will carry the memory of this long night and its dancing lights in your heart for all the years to come. The sun dips low behind the date palms, gilding the horizon with bands of copper and rose. You walk the dusty lane that winds through your village, the day's last warmth clinging to the air. Your feet are powdered with sand, the smell of river mud and blooming lotus drifting on every breeze. As you pass the neighbours' houses, whitewashed mud brick with reed roofs, you hear laughter, goats bleating, the rhythmic slap of laundry against stone. Your father is already home, washing away the dust of the fields in a clay basin outside the door. He looks up and grins when he sees you, his teeth white against skin bronzed by sun. Your mother stands at the doorway, her blue linen dress fluttering, arms folded as she surveys the world with an even gaze. She calls you in, her voice low and musical, and you step into the cool shelter of your home. Inside, the house is a haven from the heat. Thick walls hold the coolness of night before, and the packed earth floor is gentle underfoot. Your little sister chases a cat, her laughter echoing between the pillars. Your mother pours water from a tall jar, letting you rinse your hands and face, then presses a ripe fig into your palm. Its sweetness bursts on your tongue, a taste of summer even as the night draws near. The evening meal is nearly ready. Your mother stirs a pot of lentil stew, its scent mingling with garlic and cumin, and slices flatbread into pieces for everyone. Your brother sets the table o' mats around a shallow dish, cups of beer brewed from barley, a bowl of salted fish. You sit cross-legged, grateful for the simple feast and the soft glow of the oil lamp hanging from a hook above. As the family eats, your father shares news from the fields. How the irrigation canal nearly flooded this morning. How the neighbour's ox broke free and had to be chased for half a mile. How the scribe from the temple passed by, bringing word of a festival at the end of the week. Your mother asks about your day, what you saw at the market, who won the wrestling match by the well, whether you finished your basket of rushes for the priestess as promised. You answer, describing the bustle of the stalls, the old woman who sells amulets and coal, the sweet cakes piled high as a pyramid. When the meal is done, your family lingers, savouring the taste of fresh dates and the slow coolness that seeps into the house as the sun sets. Your father lights a cone of incense, the smoke spirals in the dusk, carrying prayers for health and safety up to the gods. Beyond your door, the village glows in the first blue of twilight. Neighbours gather in small groups to share news, to play music on pipes and lyres, to trade stories older than memory. You slip out to join your friends beneath a cluster of sycamore trees, where the elders sit weaving baskets, and the little ones chase fireflies in the grass. The night deepens. Far off, you hear the bells of a passing barge on the river, and the call of a herdsman urging his animals home. Overhead, the stars begin to wake, their pale fire reflected in the slow, dark water of the Nile. As the last traces of sunlight fade, torches are lit along the village lane, their flames flickering orange and gold in the warm breeze. You and your friends wander through the evening marquetta cluster of baskets and mats, where merchants display their wares beneath canopies of woven reeds. The air is filled with sound, the trill of reed pipes, the low thump of hand drums, the bright chatter of women bargaining over cloth, dates and fish. A boy a little older than you juggles 3 painted balls, his bare feet kicking up dust, making the younger children laugh. You watch, entranced, as a potter turns a lump of river clay into a bowl with deft, patient hands. A merchant calls you over to sample a piece of honey cake sticky sweet, a taste you savour long after it is gone. Your mother joins you, her arm looped through your little sister's, as they pause by a table of beads and amulets. She lets you pick on a small faience scarab, blue-green as the river in spring. You slip it onto a cord and tie it around your neck, feeling the coolness of the clay against your skin. The merchant winks, telling you it will bring luck and sweet dreams. The elders sit in a circle, spinning tales as old as the stones, of Anubis guiding souls to the afterlife, of clever servants and boastful pharaohs, of cats who guard the doorways between worlds. The village scribe, his voice sonorous, recites a hymn to Osiris as others join in, their words rising into the night and mingling with the stars. When you tire, Your mother leads you and your sister to the edge of the Nile. Here, the river glimmers under the moon, its surface broken only by the slow drift of a papyrus boat. You watch fishermen casting nets, their laughter low and content as they pull in silver-scaled catches for tomorrow's meal. On the far bank, a priestess stands in silhouette, lifting her arms to the sky in silent prayer. Your father meets you by the water's edge, and together the family sits on a woven mat, sharing the peace of the night. You rest your head in your mother's lap, listening to the lap of water, the far-off song of a nightbird, the faint ringing of temple bells. Your mother dips her hand in the river, splashing a few cool drops on your brow. It is said, she murmurs, that the Nile is the vein of the world, carrying life through all of Kemet. As long as the river flows, there will be bread and stories and love. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the sounds of the night carry you a secret language of water, wind, and distant voices. You wonder if the pharaoh himself, in his great palace far downriver, hears these same songs and feels the same cool kiss of the night air. After a while, your family rises and makes its way home, the sand soft and cool beneath your feet. Back at the house, your mother lights an oil lamp, its gentle light dancing on the whitewashed walls. You help her mix barley dough for tomorrow's bread, your hands sticky with flour, your laughter echoing in the small, safe space. Your father sits cross-legged by the door, repairing a fishing net by lamplight. He hums a song you know by heart, a prayer for good fortune and health, the same tune sung by his father and his father before him. As the bread is set to rise and the house is swept clean, your mother burns a pinch of incense at the threshold. Sweet smoke curls upward, a silent offering to the spirits who guard your home. She whispers a prayer for protection, for full granaries, for peaceful dreams. Your little sister curls up beside you on a sleeping mat, hugging her battered stuffed hippo, while your mother tucks a linen sheet over you both. The air is cool and fragrant, filled with the promise of sleep. Your father sits for a while longer, gazing at the stars through the open door. You watch his profile strong and gentle and listen as he speaks quietly to your mother about the future. The rising waters, the coming festival, the hope for another good year. You drift towards sleep, heart full with the steady rhythm of the Nile, the closeness of family, the ancient unbroken chain of night following day. The village settles into night, its sounds fading, until only the quiet chorus of frogs and insects fills the air. Through the open door, you see the stars multiply above the black silhouette of the palms. Your mother whispers that each star is a lamp lit by the gods, a promise that darkness can never win. Tonight is special, the temple festival for Isis, goddess of magic and protection. You sit up as your father brings out your best tunica, simple thing, but clean and newly mended. Your mother places a woven wreath of lotus petals on your head, smoothing your hair and smiling with pride. You feel the hush of anticipation. The night is heavy with incense and mystery. You walk together as a family through quiet streets, your feet whispering in the dust. Other villagers emerge from their homes, lanterns in hand, their faces lit by flickering flames and excitement. The path to the temple winds through the date groves and ends at a broad white staircase flanked by statues of falcons and sphinxes. The walls glow with torchlight, their surfaces covered in painted stories. Osiris's rebirth, Horus's battles, the blessings of Hathor, mother of joy. Inside the temple, shadows leap along the columns. Priests and priestesses in gleaming linen and gold lead the crowd in hymns, their voices echoing in the cool dark, blending with the beating of sacred drums. You stand with your family at the edge of the crowd, awed by the ceremony. The scent of blue lotus and myrrh fills your lungs. You feel both small and part of something vast and unending. The high priest lifts a painted bowl, offering bread and beer to the goddess. People press forward to touch the sacred altar, leaving small gifts, flowers, baskets of dates, tiny clay animals. You watch, spellbound, as a priestess scatters petals on the floor, her hands moving in a dance older than memory. Your father lifts you so you can see above the heads of the crowd. He whispers in your ear, "When we honor the gods, we honor the river, the fields, and all those who came before. We are never alone here, not under these stars, not with these stories, not with the love of family." The ceremony ends, and everyone spills into the courtyard, laughter and music rising again. Neighbors greet one another, children chase each other in and out of the shadows, elders clap their hands in time to the musician's beat. You and your friends gather near a pool, watching the moon's reflection ripple as someone tosses in a handful of silver pebbles an offering for wishes. You make your own wish, silent and secret, watching as the ripples spread, carrying your hope into the night. Your mother leads you home through streets washed in silver light. You clutch your scarab amulet and think of all you have, scene gods and music, bread and laughter, the power of belonging. Back at your house, your parents tuck you in. Your sister whispers sleepy questions. Will Isis watch over us? Will the river flood again? Do the gods listen to wishes? You promise her that yes, the gods are always near, especially when the world is quiet and hearts are brave. The oil lamp is blown out, and your family settles into sleep, the peace of the festival lingering in every breath. You lie on your mat, drifting, as the cool night air brushes your cheek. Your dreams are filled with river songs, with the golden glow of lanterns, with the gentle strength of your mother's hand. Above, the stars blaze in their thousands, guardians of the sleeping land, as the Nile carries its waters slow, patient, eternal through darkness into day. Back home, the village has grown utterly quiet. Only the occasional creak of a cartwheel, the soft snort of a donkey, or the shuffle of someone returning late from the temple disturbs the hush. Inside your house, the oil lamp has burned down to a tiny golden bead. Your mother sits on the edge of your mat, her hands cool as she smooths your brow and brushes a strand of hair from your face. She tells you a gentle story, the same one she learned from her own mother. Long ago, when the Nile was new and the world was green, the gods made the first humans out of clay from the river's edge, breathing into them the warm breath of day. She whispers that every child carries a bit of that first clay in their bones and a spark of sunlight in their heart. Her voice is soft and even, a song almost lost in the night. Your little sister is already asleep, her hand curled around her amulet, a faint smile on her lips. Your father sits nearby, cleaning and oiling his sickle for the next day's work, his eyes flickering in the lamplight. Sometimes he looks up and tells you about his own childhood, the big floods, the time he caught a giant fish, the time he saw a leopard sleeping in the tamarisk grove. The heat of the day is long gone. Now a cool breeze drifts through the open door, bringing with it the scent of water and reeds. You hear frogs singing in the canal, their voices like the plucked strings of tiny harps. A palm branch scratches gently against the mud brick wall, making you feel safe, like the world is wrapped up tight, nothing left out in the dark. Your mother gathers you and your sister close, sharing the warmth of her embrace. She says her quiet prayers, thanks for the day's bread, for the river's mercy, for the safety of her children. Your father's voice joins hers, low and steady. He asks the old gods to send gentle dreams, to bless the fields, to keep the crocodiles far from your village. You watch a moth flutter near the lamp, then land and become still. You find yourself thinking about the festival, the music and stories, the way the people all seemed to breathe and hope and celebrate together. You remember the painted walls of the temple, the faces of gods and animals, the scent of incense in the warm air. Sleep comes slowly, tugging at your thoughts. You drift in that place between waking and dreaming, where the world is both familiar and strange. In your dreams, you walk again beside the Nile, your feet sinking into the cool mud, the water glowing silver under a sky so full of stars, it seems there can never be fear or sorrow. You dream of sailing on a reed boat, gliding past crocodiles and herons, your family laughing nearby, the air sweet with lotus and the promise of morning. Sometimes you see Isis herself, her wings stretched wide, her eyes kind and shining. She leans down, brushes your cheek, and tells you that you are loved, that you, like the river, will always find your way home. In the quietest hour of night, you wake for a moment and listen to the steady breathing of your family, to the pulse of the river, to the vast, star-bright silence that belongs only to the world before dawn. You feel a great, gentle peace. You are only a small voice in this ancient land, but you are surrounded by stories, by family, by the living spirit of the Nile, and the watchful gaze of 1,000 gods. Good night, dreamer of Egypt. May the river cradle your sleep, and the old gods light your dreams, until another day of sun, bread, and stories begins again. The day's last sunlight glimmers on 1,000 rooftops as you walk the winding streets of Constantinople. The city is alive with colour rose-tinted domes, golden spires, banners fluttering from balconies. You pass beneath a row of cypress trees, their shadows tall and blue on the paving stones. Vendors are packing up their stalls along the Maze, calling out the last of their wares figs sticky with honey, spiced lamb wrapped in vine leaves, painted glass beads that catch the light. You carry a small bundle, a loaf of bread, a sprig of mint, a letter sealed with red wax. Your mother waits in the doorway of your family's modest house, set just off a quiet square where children play at dice and old men argue about the weather. She smiles when she sees you brushing dust from your tunic, her voice low and warm as she asks about your errands. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of baking bread and roasting onions. Your sister hums a hymn as she lays out the evening meal. Your father sits at a low table, his hands stained with ink and parchment dust. He is a scribe for a local merchant, and even now, as the city slows for night, he smooths the creases in a sheaf of papers, squinting to catch the last rays of sun. He looks up when you enter, his tired face lighting up. He beckons you to his side, asks about the baker and the news from the docks. You tell him what you heard rumours of new ships from Venice, a Greek poet reciting in the square the bishop's promise of a coming festival. As the meal is prepared, your mother moves quietly about the room, her hands quick and sure. She sets aside a portion of bread for a neighbour who is sick, sprinkles fresh mint in the lentil stew, pours oil into a lamp and lights it, its glow spreading soft gold over the walls. You and your sister set out the plates, giggling as you steal a taste of dates from the bowl. Your father pretends not to notice, but winks at you, his eyes kind behind the weariness of the day. The meal itself is simple, but it feels rich. Warm bread, olives, the stew thick and fragrant. Your family eats together, talking in gentle voices about the small victories and defeats of the day. Outside, the city slowly hushes as doors close and windows are shuttered against the night. When the table is cleared, your father reads aloud from a scroller parable of wise men and wandering saints, a story about a fisherman who tricks a greedy magistrate. You listen, eyes half closed, letting his words and the rhythms of your family's laughter knit themselves around you like a warm cloak. As dusk deepens, your mother draws you to the window. She points to the skyline where the Hagia Sophia glows like a pearl in the gathering dark, its great dome catching the last glimmer of sunlight. She tells you that as long as that light stands, so too will your family's hopes. Night gathers at the window, but inside, the world is gentle and bright with love. After supper, your mother and sister clear the table, setting aside crumbs for the birds that gather each dawn at your window. You help your father stack the empty bowls, his hands steady and gentle despite the day's toil. The oil lamp burns low, filling the corners of the room with flickering shadows. Its scent is faintly sweet, mixed with the last warmth of bread and stew. Your younger brother curls up on a straw mat by the hearth, humming a melody he learned from the neighbour's daughter. He pulls out a little wooden horse, a gift carved by your uncle, and sets it to gallop across the flagstones, inventing an adventure where knights defend the city walls from dragons and thieves. You watch your mother slip out the door with a small parcel bread and cheese wrapped in a clean cloth. She crosses the quiet square to the neighbour's house, where a pale light shows at the window. You know she will stay a while, speaking gentle words, perhaps sharing a prayer or a memory of easier times. Your mother's kindness is the sort that runs through the city like a hidden river quiet, necessary, taken for granted until it is gone. The rest of you tidy the room, sweep crumbs into a basket for the morning birds, and shake out the woven mats to air in the gentle night breeze. Your father opens the shutters, letting in the faint sound of bells from a distant church, the high, clear notes rising and falling in the dusk. He stands at the window for a long moment, gazing at the city. You join him, looking out over the rooftops, the narrow alleys gleaming silver in the moonlight. Down the lane, a group of boys play at wrestling, their laughter echoing off stone walls. An old man sits on the steps of the bathhouse, telling a story to anyone who will listen. You catch only snatcher tales of ancient heroes, of saints who tamed wolves, of merchants who lost and found fortunes on the wind. Inside, your sister braids your hair, her fingers deft and gentle. She sings softly, a lullaby about a swallow who brings spring on her wings. You close your eyes and let the song carry you, the notes mingling with the evening sounds, the barking of a stray dog, the distant tap of a cobbler's hammer, the hush of leaves in the courtyard. When your mother returns, she smells of the night-cool air, damp earth, the faint trace of incense from the neighbour's icon lamp. She gathers the family for evening prayers, each of you lighting a slender candle and placing it on the small shrine set in the wall. The flame's glow gilds the faces of saints painted on the wood, the gold halos shining softly. Your father leads the prayer, his voice deep and calm, thanking God for bread, for shelter, for the strength to face another day. Your mother prays for the sick neighbour, for the sailors in the harbour, for peace in the world beyond the city's walls. You pray quietly, not with words but with hope, asking that the city's ancient stones will hold firm through all the nights to come. When the prayers end, you feel lighter, like the weight of worry has lifted just a little, replaced by something bright and fragile, as sweet as the taste of honey on fresh bread. Night has fully fallen now. The city outside is hushed but alive, filled with the low murmur of voices and the secret steps of those who walk late beneath the stars. The city's heartbeat slows as darkness settles over the streets. You and your siblings change into linen night tunics, the fabric soft and cool on your skin. Your mother tucks your little brother into his nest of blankets, brushing a kiss across his brow, then draws the thick curtains closed against the outside world. Your father sits by the window a moment longer, quill in hand, finishing a letter to a distant cousin in Thessalonica. He tells you about the city beyond the walls, of caravan trails and olive groves, of the blue Aegean glittering in morning sun. You ask if you will ever see those places, and he promises that someday, if fortune smiles, you'll stand on other shores and remember this night as the heart of home. Your older sister unrolls a scrap of parchment, copying lines of a prayer she learned at church. Her lips move soundlessly, her brow furrowed in concentration. She lets you trace your finger along the neat Greek letters, teaching you their shapes and sounds. For a moment, the lamp's light makes your shadows dance on the wall strange, long-limbed giants twirling hand in hand. Outside, the city's noises have faded to a distant hush, the creak of a wagon wheel, the far-off call of a night watchman, the lonely notes of a flute winding through the alleys. You listen, eyes heavy, as your mother sits beside you, spinning flax into thread. She hums the hymn of Saint Sophia, a melody as old as the city itself. Your father blows out the last lamp. The room falls into gentle darkness, silvered by moonlight slipping through the curtains. You lie close to your sister, your brother's breath warm on your cheek, your mother's hand a gentle weight on your back. For a while, sleep does not come. You lie awake, thinking of the city's towers, the ships in the harbour, the mosaic angels shining on the dome of the Hagia Sophia. You imagine yourself wandering the empty streets, your feet echoing on the stones, guided only by the stars and the golden glow of distant candles. You remember the stories your father told, of emperors and saints, of siege and salvation, of the great feasts when the city sang from dusk to dawn. You remember your mother's prayers, her faith that every night ends, that every stone in Constantinople remembers the dreams of all who have ever lived within its walls. Slowly, gently, you drift into sleep, the city's spirit curling around you like a blanket. You dream of marble palaces and crowded markets, of river barges slipping down the Bosphorus, of bells ringing across water and sky. In your dreams, you are both yourself and someone ancient a child in a city that will endure for centuries, cradled by stone and story and love. Good night, dreamer of Byzantium. May the angels watch over your sleep, and may the city's golden light find you again with the coming dawn. You walk the muddy path home as twilight deepens over the fields, the air sweet with the scent of cut hay and distant wood smoke. Behind you, the last rays of sun stretch across the wheat stubble, catching the wings of crows settling for the night. Your bare feet are cool and damp, and your hands sting with the memory of harvester straw, scratchy wool, the ache of honest work. Your cottage stands on the edge of the village, its thatched roof bright in the evening light. A curl of smoke rises from the chimney, and you smell stew thick with onions and turnips. Your mother waves from the door, her skirt dusted with flour, her arms open to gather you in. Inside, the air is warm and soft. Your father kneels by the hearth, poking the embers into a brighter glow. Your little sister sprawls on the rush-covered floor, humming as she braids a crown of daisies. Your mother brushes dirt from your hands, smiling as she inspects your bundly few apples, a clutch of eggs, a stone smoothed by the river for her collection. The family eats together, sitting on low stools around the heavy table. There is bread from yesterday, hard but filling, and fresh cheese, crumbly and sharp. Your father breaks the bread, passing it first to your mother, then to you and your sister. Your mother pours broth into wooden bowls, and you breathe in the sharp green scent of herbs. After supper, your father mends a basket in the firelight, his hands slow and careful. Your mother patches a torn sleeve, her eyes tired but gentle. You sit by your sister, helping her fit daisies into the crown, laughing when she insists it's for the cow, the only queen in this house. The day's light fades, and your mother lights a tallow candle. The flame flickers, throwing wild shadows on the whitewashed walls. Your father begins to tell a story of the time a fox stole a hen right from under his nose, of the green man who lives in the woods, of the miracles that sometimes visit the smallest villages. You listen, letting the warmth of the room and the voices of your family settle deep into your bones. The world outside grows quietly, the croak of frogs, the chirp of crickets, the soft lowing of cattle. Your mother gathers you and your sister close, pressing a kiss to your hair, and tucks both of you into the broad, lumpy bed stuffed with straw and old feathers. You close your eyes, listening to the hush, to your mother's voice whispering the last words of a prayer. For good sleep, for kind dreams, for the grace to wake with the sun. The night settles heavy over the village, a velvet hush broken only by the soft chorus of sheep in the distant fields and the creak of branches in the orchard. Your little sister sleeps beside you, thumb curled under her chin, her daisy crown abandoned at the edge of the straw mattress. You lie awake for a while, watching the shadows from the candle flicker and dance on the beams overhead. Outside, the old dog pads around the cottage, nose twitching at the scents of fox and field mouse. Somewhere near the chicken coop, a hedgehog rustles through dry leaves, hunting for beetles. The village is a patchwork of soft lights and deeper darkness windows glowing golden, lanterns bobbing as a few late workers return home from the fields. Your mother sits by the hearth, spinning wool into thread, her foot working the treadle in a slow, steady rhythm. She hums a lullaby her own mother sang, words half lost to memory, half magic. Your father whittles a bit of willow, shaping a tiny flute for your sister's birthday, shavings piling at his feet. You drift towards sleep, the warmth of the cottage wrapping around you like a second blanket. Before you go under, your father tiptoes in and lays the flute beside your pillow, a surprise for the morning, the promise of music and laughter. Your dreams are simple and soft. You run across the fields, the grass cool and wet under your feet. You chase a white hare through the hedge and down to the riverbank, where the willows dip their branches into slow, silver water. The world in your dream is bright with sun and green with promise. In the deepest part of the night, you wake just enough to hear the low rumble of your father's voice as he tends the fire, making sure the coals will last until dawn. You hear your mother's gentle laughter, your parents murmuring together about the weather, about the coming harvest, about the old stories that hold the world together. Outside, an owl glides silent over the fields, her wings white as moonlight. The village sleeps on safe, warm, held close by the ancient rhythms of night and home. You turn in your bed, pressing close to your sister, feeling her breath on your cheek, and surrender again to dreams. Night lingers long in the countryside, wrapping the thatched cottages in a gentle dark. Sometime near midnight, a shower of rain drums softly on the roof, pattering through the straw and trickling into the water barrel outside. You wake for a moment, cocooned in warmth, and listen to the distant roll of thunder as it travels over the hills. Your mother rises quietly to check the shutters, her footsteps gentle so as not to wake the house. She lifts the edge of the blanket, smoothing it over you and your sister, then glances through the window at the wet, glistening garden. In the hearth, embers still glow, painting soft orange shapes on the floor. You catch a whisper of your parents' voices, a promise of hope for the harvest, a wish for fine weather, a memory shared. The dog grumbles and turns in his sleep, and the rain slows to a hush, fading into the steady, dripping from the eaves. You drift back into dreams. This time you are in the village square, dancing in a festival with ribbons tied to your wrists and bells on your ankles. Laughter echoes all around. Lanterns swing from the apple trees, and the air is heavy with the scent of bread baking and wildflowers in bloom. As dawn approaches, the sky pales from black to blue, and birds begin to stir in the hedges. A rooster crows, shrill and proud, waking the first of the villagers. Your mother is already up, kneading dough on the wooden board, her hands strong and sure. The cottage is cool, The rushes on the floor damp from the night's rain, but the promise of morning brings a gentle excitement. You sit up, rubbing sleep from your eyes, and find your father already by the hearth, coaxing new life from the embers. He smiles at you, setting a steaming cup of milk by your hand, and tucks the little wooden flute into your palm with a wink. Your sister wakes, eyes wide in delight, as you play a few shy notes on the flute. Your mother laughs, clapping her flour-dusted hands, and the dog howls along, his voice high and mournful. Breakfast is simple: crusty bread, cheese, a bit of stewed fruit from last summer's jars. The family eat together as the golden light pours in, washing the walls and filling the room with hope. Outside, the fields glisten with dew, the trees heavy with fresh green leaves, and the air is full of promise. The village stirs to life, and a new day begins another chance for stories, for work, for dreams spun beneath the endless sky. And as you step outside into the morning, you carry the warmth of the night with you, the laughter, the music, the soft hush of your mother's voice in the dark, a memory that will linger long after the sun climbs high and the day unfolds. Good morning, child of the village. May each dawn find you safe and strong, and may every night return you to the heart of home. The city of Chang'an is a maze of lantern-lit streets and bustling markets as the sun sets behind the distant hills. You walk home along the packed earth road, your sandals scuffing dust as vendors call out their wares: jasmine tea, candied plums, silk scarves shimmering in the last golden light. The air is warm, carrying scents of roasting chestnuts and honeyed pastries. You pass a storyteller on a corner, his voice rising above the murmur of the crowd as he spins tales of faraway kingdoms and clever monks. At the gateway to your courtyard, your mother greets you with a smile, her hair pinned with a single jade comb. She helps you slip off your dusty shoes, brushing crumbs from your sleeve, and asks if you saw the acrobats on Vermilion Bird Avenue or the dancers at the Lotus Pavilion. You laugh and tell her about the old scholar who sold you a poem, written in neat brushstrokes on a scrap of silk. Inside, the house is quiet and cool, red paper lanterns glowing softly along the corridor. Your father sits in the main room, reading by lamplight, his face serene in the gentle hush of evening. He asks if you finished your lessons at the academy and smiles at your eager stories of the marketplace. Your grandmother sits in the courtyard, shelling peas into a lacquered bowl, her hands gnarled but nimble. She beckons you to help, sharing news from the neighbours and tales from her own girlhood in the old capital. As the evening meal is served, you gather around the low table with your parents, grandmother, and younger brother. Bowls of rice steamed to pearly fluff, pork simmered in ginger and soy, sweet lotus root, and greens scented with sesame fill the table. Chopsticks clack as laughter and gentle conversation fill the air. Your father pours warm tea, raising a toast to family and peace. He recounts the day's news imperial edicts posted at the city gate, rumours of visiting ambassadors from the west, a new poem painted on the city wall by a wandering monk. After dinner, your mother lights incense in the ancestor shrine. The smoke drifts upward, curling into the rafters, carrying prayers for health, wisdom, and gentle dreams. As dusk deepens, you slip outside into the courtyard, joining your brother to chase fireflies among the bamboo. Your grandmother sits nearby, humming a folk song that threads through the night, while the moon climbs over the tiled rooftops. The night deepens as you and your brother wander out the gate, lantern in hand, to join the city's endless festival. Chang'an at night is a world of its drums thrummed from tea pavilions, coloured lanterns bob and sway above vendors' carts, and scholars declaim verses in the shadows of carved archways. You follow the sweet call of a flute past food stalls heavy with roasted duck and sticky rice cakes, past perfumers selling tiny vials of plum blossom oil, past fortune tellers who read your palm for a copper coin and a smile. Street acrobats tumble and leap, their movements lithe as cats, and crowds gather to clap and toss coins. Your mother and grandmother walk together behind you, arms linked. They pause at the stall of a clay figurine artist, choosing a tiny painted horse to add to the family altar. Your father stops to greet a friend from the academy, the two men bowing and trading a line of impromptu verse that makes the bystanders laugh. You watch the city sparkle under the moon, its tiled roofs glowing silver, its willow-lined canals reflecting the lantern's red and gold light. A boat passes by, musicians playing softly, the sounds drifting like a dream through the soft night air. Returning home, your family stops at the temple of the city god. You bow together, lighting slender candles and incense, watching the smoke spiral up past the carved dragons and the kindly gaze of painted gods. Your grandmother murmurs a prayer for good health and harmony. Your mother whispers a wish for your success in next month's exam. At home, you help your brother hang the new clay horse on the family shrine. You set out clean bowls of water and a little dish of rice for the ancestors, bowing 3 times as your father has taught you. The household settles into calm. Your grandmother tells you one last story, a tale of the Monkey King and his journey to the west. You curl up beside your brother on the wide Kang bed, the thick quilt warm over both of you, listening as your parents talk in low voices under the lantern light. As you drift towards sleep, the sounds of Chang'an's night drift in. A lute played softly across the wall, the call of a night watchman making his rounds, the faint clang of the city gate being locked for the night. You dream of bright lanterns drifting down the river, of pages of poetry fluttering in the night wind, of the great city alive and glowing all around you. Your grandmother's voice lingers in your mind as you lie beneath the thick quilt, the hush of night settling over your room. The paper window glows with the softest lantern light from the courtyard, and you hear the gentle sweep of a broom as your mother tidies the stone walk one last time. Your father checks the bolt on the main gate, humming an old folk tune from his own childhood in a far-off village. Your brother sighs in his sleep, dreaming of fireflies and festival drums. You listen to the distant echoes of the city-alone poet singing at the bridge, the fading laughter of merchants closing their stalls, the croak of a frog hidden somewhere in the bamboo. Your mother steps in, brushing your hair back from your forehead. She leaves a small clay rabbit on your pillow, a token for lucky dreams, and whispers, "Rest now. May the good spirits watch over you, and may your mind be as bright as the stars." You close your eyes. The night air smells of lotus, river water, and a hint of incense. You drift towards sleep, heart still full of the city's light and life. In your dreams, you walk the lantern-bright streets again, hand in hand with your brother, as paper boats drift down the canal, each holding a flickering wish. You dream of poems written in moonlight, of scholars and dancers and storytellers, of dragons coiled beneath willow trees, wise and watchful. Far above, the moon glides across the city, silver and silent, watching over all, the palace, the market, the humblest home. Chang'an is a sea of lights, and you are one tiny, shining, point-safe, cherished, a single verse in a great, unfolding story. As dawn begins to pale the sky, your father opens the window to let in the day's first breeze. Birds call from the rooftops. You stretch and yawn, feeling the warmth of family and the gentle excitement of a new day. Your mother sets out steamed buns and tea. Your brother laughs and chases the cat around the table. Your grandmother tells you that the city is never the same from one sunrise to the next. The world outside is golden and busy once more, but in your heart you carry the deep peace of a night spent in Chang'an where every lantern, every story, every loving voice is a blessing, a comfort, and a memory to keep forever. And now, as you drift somewhere between waking and sleep, all the nights you have travelled begin to fold together. The quiet of an ancient Roman hearth, the wild winds and warm fires of a northern winter, the star-bright silence of the Nile, the soft gold of candlelight on a Byzantine wall, the gentle hush of a medieval cottage, and the lantern-lit wonder of Chang'an. You have wandered stone-paved streets and snowy forests, sailed moonlit rivers and crossed bustling squares. You have listened to mothers' lullabies, fathers' stories, siblings' laughter. You have shared simple meals, joined in old prayers, and carried the same small hopes in every age. That those you love will be safe, that the night will pass gently, that tomorrow will be a little brighter. The world changes, cities rise and fall, languages shift, old gods give way to new dreams. But some things remain. The warmth of home, the strength of family, the promise of sleep after a day honestly lived. A fire to gather around, a story to whisper, the soft weight of a hand in yours as darkness gathers. Wherever and whenever you find yourself, on the banks of the Nile, beneath the domes of Constantinople, in a village by the North Sea, or under the lanterns of Chang'an, there are always lights against the dark. There is always bread to break, a story to share, a dream waiting to take you through the long hours until dawn. So close your eyes now. Let the memories of distant places and gentle voices carry you through the hush of night, over rivers and mountains, past fields and temples and towers, back, always, to a place of warmth and welcome. May the old stories watch over your dreams. May the laughter of families and the patience of the stars guard your sleep. May you wake with hope in your heart and the knowledge that, across all time, you are never truly alone. Good night, traveler. May your journey through the night be peaceful, and may morning find you rested, safe, and ready to greet the world once more.